You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in our friend Cary London, managing partner at Shulman and Hill in Greater New York, in New York City, focusing on civil rights, police brutality, excessive force, wrongful convictions, personal injury, and workers' comp. Cary is the chair of the Civil Rights Division of the Brooklyn Bar Association and a board member of the Brooklyn Defender Services and director of the Bronx Bar. It's amazing,
That's correct,
Cary.
Brady.
There's a lot,
Thank you
but
for having
let's
me.
talk about your most recent accomplishment, which would be founding member of Lawyer Stories Connect. Cary London, welcome in, man. Thanks for being here, buddy.
I'm very excited to join the Lawyer Stories community. I'm very excited to see everything that they have to offer, and I've only been impressed so far, Benny.
That's really kind of you. And let's throw out there that we actually met a couple summers ago. We were having an event on a rooftop, a nice day in Brooklyn. You know, I don't get away too often. I was super pumped to be there, and you come walking in with our friend Kyle Newman. Shout out to Kyle Newman. And dude, you had great energy, man. I knew I liked you right away. I was like, this guy's cool. He's going to be part of the whole Lawyer Stories thing. We had a great time. So, I appreciate you coming out there. And I just want to, on behalf of Lawyer Stories, thank you for joining our founding class. So, tell us, Cary, originally a New Yorker.
Originally a New Yorker. I grew up in Westchester, and then, I grew up with a lot of like-minded individuals in a very Jewish community. I wanted to branch out from that. And so instead of going to Michigan or Emory or Cornell, I decided to go to University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. So I went down south for 4 years, had a great time, met a lot of good, interesting people. And then I decided to bring my talents back to New York to go to law school. At New York Law School. And, I had a great time meeting a lot of people there, people that are now judges, co-counsel on the opposite end of the courtroom. And live here with my family in Soho, New York. And I'm really just taking one day at a time, trying to protect the civil rights of New Yorkers as we go forward in this crazy world, Benny.
I know, I love that. I feel like that's a dream job for a lot of people in New York, and it's got to, or a lot of people anywhere. Like in law school, you always want to do something that's really impactful, and what you do is totally impactful. And so we're going to get there in a minute. I just want to go through your story a little bit more. So, tell us, you went to UVA. That's interesting. Maybe is there a lot of politics there or something? And
There's a lot of politics there. It moves just because they speak slower, though, does not mean that people are less intelligent, and that's something that I had to learn.
Oh, really?
Talk fast.
Why? How did you learn? Did you have a moment where you had to learn that? Where you're like, "Hey, guy, hurry up!"
The way they speak, the
Yeah.
way my friends from Virginia and down south articulate, and the way their thought processes work are not the same the way Northerners and the way East Coasters sort of think of everything. And I met a lot of intelligent people that just had a different line and way of thinking and spoke in completely different tones with completely different words than I did. And so I think that helped me grow as a New Yorker to come back to be able to help. Because not only local New Yorkers' civil rights get violated, I have a lot of cases from out of towners who come in and they're wrongfully arrested, or they're beaten up by the police, or they're at the wrong place and the wrong time. And unfortunately, something happens that's out of their control. And criminal defense is a legal service you have to pay for out of pocket.
Right,
If he gets arrested, tomorrow you go see a lawyer, it's not contingency. You're paying him money. And so when I went to law school and I graduated, what I really did want to do was criminal defense, because I thought that was going to help people. And so when I graduated from law school, my goal was to get into a DA's office. And so I applied to a lot of DA's offices and made it to the final round in 3 out of the 5, meaning you make it to the actual district attorney. At the time, Robert Morgenthau, Charles Joe Hines, and Richard Brown in Queens. And I didn't get any of those jobs. So what I did from there was I took a job defending police officers accused of misconduct at the One Police Plaza trial room in Lower Manhattan. And that was the first job that I had out of law school, was dealing with cops who were not criminal charges, served with administrative charges in violation of the NYPD patrol guide.
Oh, that's interesting. So was it like a hearing type of setup? Like they had like an administrative hearing and like a hearing officer, and so you went in there with them and like an administrative judge or something?
An ALJ, an administrative law judge, and it was all about vacation days. I wasn't
touching. Right. It's always about vacation days.
Exactly. So I was fighting and litigating and learning police lingo, learning the patrol guide, learning what they can and can't do, what they can write in their memo books, what they can't. And I got to tell you, I never realized how many officers, when you leave your memo book around, will draw penises.
That's great. That's
the amount of times those charges came.
Why? Why would they draw that?
You leave your memo book in a precinct or on the job anywhere. You come back, there'll be penises.
Oh, so it was your book. They weren't like daydreaming about them, putting them in their own book. All right, sorry. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they put them in your book. That's great. So
that was one of the first cases I had, and I didn't understand that that's what I'm here to do. But cops lose vacation days if they mess around like that.
Wow. So are they in a union? Like, did you have to learn like union lingo and all that sort of thing?
Of course. They're in the PBA, which is one of the strongest unions in the entire United States.
Yep.
It's 24,000 uniformed New York City police officers.
Wow.
And they have many lawyers that obviously defend them in all sorts of different arenas. And I was at the lowest totem pole, which is the vacation days administrative law judges at One Police Plaza.
But that's amazing that's like an actual niche.
Yes.
Vacation days. Like this guy, like what was like an issue that you saw? Like, I'm kind of curious. Like, I'll
give you a perfect example. One of my first cases I took to trial was something that me and you do, Benny, in everyday life. It is not a violation of our code because we don't have a code. We're lawyers. We have an ethical code we have to abide by. But if, perfect example, an officer who lived in Long Island, his neighbor's dog kept defecating on his grass. And so he did it once. He went over. He said, please, could you stop doing it? The next day he did it again. And the third day, the cop goes over and allegedly yells at the guy, right? And insults him, doesn't put his hands on him, yells at him, insults him, and threatens him and says, stop having your dog defecate on my property.
Right.
He got served with charges and specifications of the One Police Plaza trial room for engaging in conduct prejudicial to the order, efficiency, and discipline of the department. And they were asking for a 5 vacation day hit. And the guy's looking at me like, you're telling me I got to give up 5 vacation days because my neighbor's dog pooped on my lawn and I told him to stop? And the officers have to live by a different code of conduct.
So wait, they have to, as a punishment, they have to like give up vacation days?
Yep. If somebody it's called dropping a log. If you get into a fight with an off-duty officer at the supermarket over your place in the line at checkout and you drop an IAB log, IAB has to interview the officer and they may or may not decide to bring him up on charges and specs in relation to that incident.
Wow. That's crazy.
Most people don't realize that.
Sounds like
I did that for about a year and a half as I was trying to really get into criminal law. This was administrative law, but I was learning. Then I was able to get into a public defender organization called Brooklyn Defender Services, which really was fantastic. If my wife didn't want nice things, as I always say, I'd still be there. It was more like a hobby than it was a job. Because you were thrown on it was like legal aid, but on steroids. You're thrown on the front line.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, here are 30 cases. There's 30 guys in the back. They're all in jail. Some might be violent. Some might not be. There's a little piece of glass in between. Here, go interview them.
But you liked it. You liked it. What did you? So you said that. So what did you like so much about it?
Oh my God! Because you're thrown into the fire pit, and these guys have nothing. Their families have given up on them. They're locked away in jail. This is before bail reform. A judge could remand them, throw away the keys, send them to Rikers Island. You won't see them for 2 months. They're scared. There's 50 of them in this dirty cell. You're their only light to get outside. And then I show up. And I'm not just like any other public defender who's bringing a book, who's wearing sneakers, who's wearing a janky suit. I show up like I am a private, polished attorney ready to help them. And I would come home I was so happy and excited after every 8-hour arraignment shift that I have to bring myself down and I'd have to like calm down. And arraignments is 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. in New York. So you're either working the 8 to 5 shift or 5 to 1 shift. So there are times I wouldn't get out of court until 2 a.m.
It's like night court on TV.
It's exactly what it's like. In Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, and Queens, they have to have that. In Staten Island,
Yeah.
Westchester, Nassau, and Suffolk, arraignments closes at 5. You get arrested after 5, you're sitting in until the next day.
Okay. So Cary, like at the beginning, like how did you know you wanted to be a lawyer?
So I come from a family of lawyers.
Okay.
My uncle is an immigration lawyer. My other uncle is a criminal defense lawyer.
Okay.
And my dad was a criminal defense lawyer growing up who actually represents currently the NYPD, which makes for a little awkward dinner conversations because he does not approve of a lot of the work that I do.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So where's your uncle an immigration lawyer?
My uncle's an immigration lawyer in Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
No, in Connecticut. My other uncle is a criminal defense lawyer in the Bronx. And then my dad has an office 10 blocks from me, but I never see him during the workday.
You never see him. Okay. So like, tell us about like your time. You went to New York Law. Just to kind of backstep a little bit. Tell us about your time there. Like, did you like law school? Like, what were some challenges you encountered? Anything that you really you loved?
I loved law school.
Okay.
I really did love law school. I was on moot court and law review, which were on the...
Wow, good for you.
So you had like a special area that you could hang out and study in, which I really liked. I loved moot court. Moot court was like practice trials when you were in law school. And all of the moot court members, there were 16 of us on the team. They're all now either successful plaintiffs lawyers, successful prosecutors, AUSAs. 3 of them are judges. 3 out of the 16 are already judges. You know what I mean? And I'm 40 years old, and I feel like that's young to be a judge at this point. But I loved it because we went everywhere for competitions. We went to Vegas. We went to LA. We went to New Jersey. We went everywhere for these competitions. And I was good at arguing. So I would always place as, number 1 or number 2 or number 3 oralist in the competition. They'd give you these big trophies that are still up at New York Law School in the trophy case. That's
amazing. That's great. You just go there and take pictures with them randomly,
I really should do that.
So give it. There's some law students listening out there. Like, what advice do you have for any law students out there?
Do what you love. Do what you want to do. Do not work in big firm law. My father-in-law is a big firm lawyer. He's 71 years old. No, he takes 2 days a year off, his birthday and Yom Kippur. He is 71 and still working like a madman. You do not want to go somewhere where you're not going to be happy going into work. I always think of that meme when it's cold out and the guy is turning on the shower. He's like, ah. And then he's putting on his clothes. He's like, ah. And then he's getting in his car. He's like, I don't want to do this. As a criminal defense lawyer and a civil rights lawyer, I really don't feel that way. I feel like I'm getting up and I'm excited to tackle the world, to look at new things. And when you're in law school, I know you want that summer internship that pays 20 grand for the summer. I know you want the Simpson Thatcher, the white shoe, the Vetter Price. I'm telling you, go into not public interest, but something that you like, either working for the city as an assistant corporation counsel. You can do different types of civil there. Working as an assistant district attorney just to get your trial skills. Working as a public defender at legal aid just to get your communication and trial skills. There are plenty of areas you can go into that don't translate to big law. When I was at New York Law, especially on the 8th floor, all anybody wanted was that big law summer internship and big law job. It's all I thought they cared about. And I was never once interested in that. I never even applied to work any of those places. And I'll tell you, every single friend from law school that went to work at one of those big firms is out of the law now. Out of the law.
They're just out of it completely. They didn't do what they wanted.
Real estate, sales.
Yeah.
They left.
Sales, huh? No kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
They just left because it really breaks you down, your soul, your spirit, your mental health, and it's really not worth it.
Yeah.
You run a great program here on Lawyer Stories. You run a great organization, and you're happy to do it. You know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
And to interview people and to put greater good into the world and to pay it forward. And the problem is when you work at these large firms, you don't have the individual autonomy and you don't have the time to pay anything forward. The amount of favors I still do in a day that have nothing to do with me making money is through the roof. And my wife or my partners will always tell me, stop doing favors for people, but it's innate. And if you do favors for people, you're good to people and you pay it forward, I feel like Hashem brings it back and rewards you.
Oh, I love that. I love that, man. That's great. That's really great stuff. And you had some great internships along the way. I'm gonna catch up to where we are now, but it caught my eye because it looked like you had some really cool stuff. Obviously, I'm a big like NFL football fan. You had an internship with the Oakland Raiders. You worked for Fox News, Brooklyn Defenders. We talked about did you go out to like Oakland for like a summer or something? Is that what happened?
I went out to Oakland for a summer. I lived
Nice.
in Oakland, not San Francisco, because I was like, I'm not, because everyone else who did the internship was like, don't live in Oakland. It's a dog of a town. I'm sorry if there are any Oakland viewers. So everyone else in the Raiders do a 6 internship program. They do
Wow.
2.
Okay.
They do 1 person in high school, 1 person in college, and 4 people in law school.
No kidding.
Yeah. So it's a very good program. It was run by Jeff Bleacham, I believe, who was the general counsel at that point. Now it's Dan Zentrelli. And they were really good at putting us in a program to learn. The only problem was it was an internship. So it was still 9 to 5. And at 5, they would go back into San Francisco and I am stuck in Oakland.
Okay.
But the reason I did that was because I wanted to see if entertainment law was what I wanted to go into.
Sure.
And what I realized was entertainment law is a really sexy way to say contract law.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a little boring to me. I'm sorry.
I think that's really cool. Like, an eye-opening. It makes a lot of sense. Like, that's, it's contracts. Like, who was the quarterback, by the way, like back then? And like running back, was it like Bo Jackson? Like, was he?
No, I wish it was Bo Jackson. It was the summer, so they weren't playing.
Okay. All right. I don't know
it was whoever was before Derek Carr. I feel like they went through like 10 quarterbacks.
Yeah, they went through. That was a tough question. All right, we weren't expecting that. Okay, so
sorry.
So you started off defending cops, and we talked about that, like the administrative hearings. It's all about the vacation days. It's funny you say that because in my job, I see that all the time. When we update the personnel policy or whatever, like have a union negotiation, it's always about, and I love my job. I like to make that clear. I'm blessed to have it. It's always about like, the vacation time and like that sort of thing. So that's interesting. You launch your own practice. And then you get absorbed into like a bigger firm. Tell us about that whole experience.
So I ended up leaving the public defender's office with a guy, really good guy, just had different ambitions than me. We were together for 4 years and made some money, not a ton of money, made some money. And he just decided to retire. He was like, I want a simple life. He, wanted to live deep out in Long Island in Suffolk, close to the Hamptons, like exit 68 on the LIE. And he sort of retired. And so I said, I'm just starting. I'm not ready to retire.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what he's doing now. I wish him the best, but.
Was he like retire age? Like, was he like 65 or?
No.
Okay. So
30.
Okay. Well,
he just had different aspirations. He wanted to slow down. He wanted to I think he took a job teaching at Toro Law School, actually.
Well, you did all right then if he can retire. All right. Anyway, go ahead. So
then I started my own law firm, and I did a really good job of building up the civil rights and the criminal defense. And I sort of, when I was with Joe, we sort of had basically 80% criminal defense, 20% civil rights. And then when I split with Joe, it was basically 75% civil rights, 25% criminal, because I really enjoy giving people money. In criminal defense, you take money from them. In civil rights, you give them money.
Yeah, that must be awesome.
Free,
yeah.
So you give them money.
Sure.
I had a McDonald's worker that I got a $200,000 settlement for last week who came in and he was crying because he didn't think it was real.
Yeah.
He was crying because he didn't think it was real. I'm like, that $200,000 is absolutely changing his life. He's getting an apartment. He's getting a car. He's going back to school. Absolutely changed his life versus me taking money from someone to get them out of trouble.
And that was after like the fees and everything, the $200,000. You were just like, here you go. Wow.
That was his. And
do you ever let me ask you that? Let me stop right there. So like, will you say somebody who might not have seen money like that before, like, do you say, hey, like I have this like finance guy, like this person who might help you like invest it, or is that's not really your like?
I don't do that only because I think of what I don't know if you remember from, and I'm just going to tell you this because it's funny. I don't know if you remember from Real Housewives of OC, Thomas Gerard was dating Erica. He was one of the biggest PI lawyers in all of California, and what he was doing was, we have people come by the office all the time being like, hey, you should have your clients invest with us. Here's lunch.
Okay. Gotcha.
And I don't want ever someone to say that I steered them in a direction that's wrong. I say it's your money. Do not go to a check cashing place.
Right.
Put it in a bank because the check cashing is 10%, and invest it. If you want to know who I use, I'm happy to share. I'm not recommending anyone. But anyway, Tom Gerard went broke and they auctioned off all of his stuff. And so I actually bid on his Attorney of the Decade award that I won, which is for like $300, which is pure crystal. And it says Trial Lawyer of the Decade presented to Thomas V. Girardi.
That's awesome, dude.
Anyway.
Wait, how did you, what? I don't get, like, how did you get that?
He went bankrupt because he was stealing all his clients' money, and they auctioned off all of his stuff.
He was stealing. Okay,
and so it was an online auction, and they had a thing where you could pay to just have them ship it to you. And I was like, oh my god, I want to. This is because he was like a huge lawyer back in the day.
Yeah. Is his name on that thing and everything? Oh, that's crazy. Where is he now?
In jail.
Oh, jeez. All right.
He was convicted a few months ago, but anyway, we're talking about civil rights, not criminal defense.
Yes.
And so I really enjoyed giving clients money. And so then I went after me and Joe were together for 4 or 5 years. I was on my own for 4 or 5 years. And then George Floyd happened. And George Floyd was an absolutely horrific thing. But I think in the timeline of American history, it's going to be looked at as a life-changing event because personal injury has a lot of subdivisions, right? You have PI. Most people think of PI as negligence, right? You think of car accident, you think of slip and fall, you think of construction accidents. What you don't realize is there are multiple other umbrellas under personal injury. There's also medical malpractice, and there's also civil rights. And those are all contingency-based representations. And so all of these larger PI firms were like, oh my God, like we need to start getting into civil rights. So randomly, I got a bunch of firms reaching out to me because I had about 400, 500 civil rights cases because I was the only one that was doing it. I would take everything from 25 years in jail to a wrongful conviction. There's a plaque up there of a guy I got out, all the way down to 1 night in jail. So I would take cases worth 20 million and I would take cases worth 20,000. And there was nobody that was doing that. It was either you were kind of a low-level lawyer who was feeding off the bottom, or you were one of the big guys at the top. But I wanted to help everyone. So I was taking them all. And so I did a couple interviews with a couple firms, and some of them I think but they're going to remain nameless. And I decided to join forces with Shulman and Hill. J.J. Hill and Alex Shulman were two young, energetic guys that were building this huge firm of workers' compensation and personal injury. And so then they absorbed my civil rights practice. I brought my entire team over, which I still have now. And
really? How many? So, like, how does that work? Like, how many people was that?
So, it was a team of 6. So I have a former city attorney, Omar, a former assistant district attorney from Queens, Michael, and then a former legal aid attorney, Rachel. And so me and our 3 lawyers and 2 paralegals came over here, just basically plug and play because we already had all of the files and all the cases, and we just started expanding. And I really like the big firm because it gives me an opportunity to do more events and to help more people. Like on Juneteenth, we took $2,500, rented a U-Haul, went to Costco, filled it up with a ton of stuff.
Oh, I love it. I love that, man.
On MLK Boulevard. Oh, that was great.
That's amazing. Yeah,
we're able to do things like that. And the backpack drives, we do big backpack drives.
I love that.
It's not stuff that PI lawyers and workers' comp lawyers usually do,
Yeah.
So we're able to give back to the community to show them that we care. And so,
Cary, like, what inspires you to do that? You know what I mean? Like, you described your background, and like you don't have to do that stuff. I mean, that's amazing, man. Like, what inspires you? I love that.
Honestly, it's the kids. I became a much different person once I had my 2 kids.
Yeah.
To be able to look them in the eyes and know that you're going to work doing something that's not just looking at looking at papers and pushing papers and printing and typing, like know that I'm actually in the real world helping people, making a difference. Being an advocate for the people that can't really advocate for themselves. Because Benny, if me and you are walking down the street with an open container of alcohol that's still illegal in New York City, we're not getting stopped. But a lot of other people that are in lower socioeconomic areas like Brooklyn and the Bronx that might not have the white skin color that we have are unfortunately targeted. They're unfortunately profiled, and they're stopped. Arguments ensue. It gets out of hand.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's really that's why I got into it, because I just felt like if we're not going to help, we're not going to go to law school and use our law degree as a sword to help people. And it started with criminal defense and morphed into civil rights. And what are we really doing here? What are we doing here for our kids?
Yeah, and I feel like, that's amazing. I feel like a lot of people want to like help people, but you're doing like work that is just that's incredible to be able to do that, and to tell your kids like the type of work you're doing, and when they understand, like that's just a great thing, man. So
We also do personal injury and workers' comp, and I also love that
yeah,
type of law. Just
yeah.
that my passion is in the civil rights.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So, Carrie, you're a trial attorney. Like, tell us, like, when you have a case, you hear there are a lot of funnels out there. There are a lot of like people that try to just get the cases and settle, which is fine. I mean, there's a lot of different sort of like models of how to do it. But I feel like you're really working up the cases and you're trying to figure out like what makes you take a case to trial.
Well, a good settlement, neither sides are happy, as everyone always says. Everyone has to give something up.
Right.
My cases, I don't determine what cases go to trial. The clients determine what cases go to trial. I never play judge, jury, executioner, and God. I explain the offer to the client. I show them the worst parts of their case. And I say to them, you're guaranteed 2/3 of this amount. Because in civil rights cases, there really aren't many expenses. I'm going to be honest. It's really just the filing fee. We're not really hiring experts that much unless it's a real serious physical injury because it's time in custody. Someone who spent 19 years unlawfully incarcerated on death row can testify to what it was like every day being in the box, which is solitary confinement, or the shoe for 23 hours, having 1 hour of daylight. You know how effective that is on a jury to hear that for 19 years, this guy had to do that for a crime he didn't commit because a detective forced a witness to pick him out in a lineup. That is why I explained to them, because on a personal injury case, there's a lot of expenses. So when you go to trial,
Right.
the client understands the expenses go through the roof. With civil rights cases, we don't have that issue because it's a time in custody and you don't need an expert to prove that. You need the client's words. It's me and the client spending time together and prepping him to be articulate, understandable, empathetic, sympathetic, respectable while he's on the stand so that everyone else can relate to the situation that he's in. So I really sit the client down. I go over the worst evidence that we have for our case. And I say, this is what they're going to hammer, hammer, hammer. And then I cross them and I say, if you can withstand my cross and all of this bad evidence, then I'm happy to go to trial. If you don't think you can and you want something guaranteed, then we should just take this settlement offer. There is one situation where the city will take a no pay. It's happened to me twice, and those are two cases I've tried, which I won. But the city can sometimes take a no pay stance, and they could say a lot of situations when clients are charged with assault on a police officer, the police officer is really the one who escalated it, and pre-body camera, it was the client's word versus the cop's word.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the city would say, we're backing this cop, we believe this cop, we don't think he did anything wrong, and we have no choice but to go to trial because the city's offering zero. And those are the situations that I love because there's no pressure.
Right. There's no pressure. You can just go in there and do what you can. And
There's nothing we turn down.
so,
One situation, though, where I did lose a case. It happens. It was in front of Judge Jack Weinstein. It was a very interesting, novel area of the law because the most common causes of action in civil rights cases are unlawful stop, false arrest, malicious prosecution, denial of right to fair trial, and excessive force. So malicious prosecution used to have certain elements to it. There were 4 elements, and one of the elements was that the case had to be a dismissal on the merits. And in criminal
Right.
law, there are multiple ways to get a dismissal. It could be not guilty after trial. It could be an ACD. It could be a dismissal in the interest of justice. It could be a judge dismissing something for facial insufficiency. But not all of those are on the merits. So a lot of times, even if you get your criminal case dismissed, the cause of action of malicious prosecution was barred. And I had a situation where I had a retired Army vet, and the cops illegally entered his home and arrested him in his own home for resisting arrest, obstructing governmental administration, and disorderly conduct. And the DA's office, because he was an Army vet and he did nothing wrong, dismissed the case in the interest of justice.
okay.
And his criminal defense attorney is not going to stand up and say, wait a minute, Your Honor, we're not taking this dismissal on this basis because X, Y, and Z, because
Right.
they're not thinking about that. They're like, great, they're
Right.
just in the case. However, a dismissal under the case law in the interest of justice barred malicious prosecution. So I lost that trial because the judge had to dismiss malicious prosecution before submitting it to the jury because under the case law, my client got a dismissal on the interest of justice, and that was not a dismissal under the merits as enumerated by case law interpretations. So the judge got off the bench, sat down right next to me at the table and said, but Mr. London, I implore you to take this further. And Jack Weinstein, who passed away now, was a legendary EDNY judge. We took his advice and we appealed it, lost the appeal, and then took a long shot, a Hail Mary, and applied for cert to the United States Supreme Court. And lo and behold, the United States Supreme Court granted cert and asked us to come argue the case. And that was Thompson v. Clark, which we argued in July of 2021, which was
Larry Thompson, baby.
Exactly.
Larry Thompson. Come on, I did my research.
It's one of the cases I am most proud of.
Yeah, for sure. So you went. So let's thank you for the procedural history. That's what it's called, right?
Sorry for the boring part.
No, that's great. So tell us about the malicious prosecution. Like you went to the Supreme Court, Cary London?
So, yes, but it was COVID. So during COVID, only one person was allowed. They still had the COVID rules in effect.
Okay.
Only one person was allowed to enter. So I came. I didn't personally argue it. Amir Ali, who's now actually just became a magistrate judge in federal court, he worked for this place called the Center for Appellate Litigation, and the MacArthur Institute of Justice. Center for Appellate Litigation was the appeals. MacArthur Institute of Justice, and he was willing to help us with the appeal. And so, since he's argued previously in front of the United States Supreme Court, we were like, Amir, go. I was a trial lawyer. He was like, you did a great job. I obviously helped him prep. We went together, and then I basically held the briefcase outside. He went in. You could listen to the arguments online. So
that's awesome.
And then Judge Kavanaugh issued the decision. And say what you want about the Supreme Court, about how conservative they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely disagree with their Roe v. Wade overturning, but that's not why we're here. You could have a whole podcast on that alone. But Judge Kavanaugh issued the decision, and we were all shocked that he decided in our favor.
Wow.
And he now said he went even further. He didn't even argue the small issue of whether or not a dismissal in the interests of justice bars malpros. He said, I'm throwing dismissal on the merits completely out. Any dismissal, no matter how, no matter what mechanism, no matter when, no matter where, qualifies under malicious prosecution under the federal statute, which was a huge, huge victory for civil rights all over America because it's a federal statute.
That's amazing. Like, congratulations. I feel like that's like a lot of young attorneys sort of, I don't want to say dream, but like, the ambition to get to the Supreme Court with a case. I mean, that's crazy.
Now, what most people don't understand is that civil rights is a novel area of the law.
It is.
And
it is.
It's a fee-shifting statute area of the law, which most people don't really understand what that means. And I know you do, but let me explain to the viewers. Fee-shifting statute means that if you take a case to trial and you win that trial, as the attorney, you get your choice between 1/3 of the verdict or however many hours you put in the case times your hourly rate. So the hourly rate's determined by the courts. I've been determined in the EDNY to be worth $550 an hour, in the SDNY to be worth $600 an hour.
Okay.
So that means that if I win a case in the EDNY and I put 300 hours of work into that case, I get my choice of 300 times 500, which is about 150,000, or 1/3 of the verdict. So what it means is it incentivizes people to take $25,000 cases to trial. Because if I win a $25,000 case and the client gets a $25,000 verdict, that means that I have my choice of $8,000 or $150,000.
Yeah, wow.
Which means and then the client gets more anyway, because the client gets 3/3 instead of 2/3.
Right.
So that's why civil rights is so dangerous for the government to play with fire. Because if you go to trial with someone who knows what they're doing and they win, they can take you to
the government, and the government has to pay that out. That's the government. Yeah.
Government has to pay that out. The city of New York.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting.
That's what's fun. That's what's fun about this.
Do you have any like mementos from like the Supreme Court case? Like, do you have anything that like you hang on the wall or like any like?
I mean, I have the newspaper articles.
That's great. No, that's really cool. I mean, it's everywhere. I went online. That's really cool. So tell us a little bit about your firm, like Shulman and Hill. Like, how long have you been there? Tell us what. I know you guys are doing like a lot of sort of different type of law, but I just want to like give you guys like a shout out, like the whole firm.
I appreciate that. So we have 5 offices. We have our flagship in Manhattan, which is the full 15th floor of One State Street Plaza, which is beautiful, great place to work. I love coming in. We have great views, although I have a tinier office because I joined later. They've been around for a while, but JJ and Alex are great guys. And it started as a workers' compensation firm, which morphed into a personal injury firm, which morphed into a personal injury civil rights and workers' compensation firm. There's about 40 lawyers and about 60 in support staff spread over 5 offices. The huge one is in Manhattan. Then we have satellite offices, each with 2 attorneys and 2 paralegals in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Queens, and in Long Island.
And you're in Brooklyn?
No, I am in the Manhattan office.
You're in Manhattan. Okay.
If I'm on trial in Brooklyn, I harass the staff in Brooklyn. When I'm on trial in Brooklyn, they know I'm like a tornado because I work out of there.
And did you start the civil rights division there?
Yeah, I started the civil rights.
that's tell me about that. Like, that's pretty incredible to be able to, like, you know, because it's 40 people at the firm. I mean, probably less before you started, but that's like a really big deal. You know, tell me about
it was like a bull in a china shop. You know what I mean? Because they're used to working a certain way. They're used to only handling certain types of cases. And then I come in and I'm like, oh, you know, this is about helping people and making money. And they're like, well, we do help people in PI and workers' comp. I'm like, I know, but this is a different kind of help. And so there's like a lot of back and forth, but I can learn a lot because a lot of the things that negligence lawyers do, I can take over through the civil rights arena because I came from a criminal law background. I did not come from a civil background. And you know, civil procedure is an animal on its own. Time to answer, time to amend, time to serve, being marked off, time to file a motion after NOI is filed. These are just things that, you know, I was learning right to a speedy trial. I was learning Fourth Amendment violations.
Yeah.
Well, these guys were learning, you know, what 240 and 241 mean when you fall off a ladder. So it was a really good synergy, I have to say, because it's a lot of different types of people from different types of backgrounds. And, you know, and we do a lot of international hiring too. We actually brought someone over from Ukraine when the war started.
Wow.
She's still here. Zini is amazing. We do an international internship over the summer. Last year, we had a young girl from Paris. This year, we have a guy coming from Spain. So because the civil rights sort of opens us up to more exposure. And I also do a lot of TV, which I love, but you don't get paid.
Yeah, tell me what channels, by the way, like that. I've seen you like your TV.
So I do a lot of Fox 5. I do a lot of New York 1. And occasionally I do like WABC, which is the local. It's just they want legal commentators and they find me colorful and speaking off the cuff.
Oh, totally. You belong there. You belong there. It's amazing.
Next week, I'm going to be speaking about Daniel Penny when the case is a little more along. That's the Marine who choked the guy on the subway, the mentally ill Michael Jackson performer who unfortunately passed away. And he's on trial right now for criminally negligent homicide and manslaughter.
I feel like all these, like, I don't want to say crazy, but all these, like, intense issues happen in New York, like, every single day. You know what I mean? And, like, some of them get brought to our attention because of social media and because of, you know, just the way that the world is now. So I know we have limited time, but I do want to ask you this. So I feel like being a civil rights attorney is something that, you know, a lot of people go to law school like wanting to do because a lot of people, you know, they read about the past and like civil rights cases and they see everything on TV and it's sort of like it becomes an aspiration. Like, what type of characteristics and attributes would you say do you need to have to be a successful civil rights attorney?
You need patience, you need empathy, and you need patience.
Okay.
Our clients sometimes will look at us to solve all of their problems. And I have to explain to them, we're here for a specific set of problems. When the police violated your rights, when you were unlawfully arrested, when you were wrongfully incarcerated, when they used excessive force on you. I understand you have a housing situation. I'm not a housing lawyer.
Right.
And you have a family court situation. I don't do family court. I understand your work is screwing you on wages. I don't do that, Mr. John. I feel bad saying that, but I'm happy to give you a referral. I'm happy to refer you to someone. And, you know, the response is, oh, well, they want me to pay them. I'm like, I know not all areas of the law are contingency where we work for free and we don't get paid unless we win. There are other areas where you have to pay them either way. In family court, if there's a custody dispute, you know, the person who wins isn't getting some of the feelings of the daughter they get back or to spend time with the daughter. They get money from the client. So that's why it's difficult and you have to have patience to explain this. And sometimes they turn on you and they get really angry. And we are dealing with a more mentally ill area of our population because unfortunately cops do unlawfully arrest a lot of mentally ill people because instead of dealing with the problem, instead of fixing the problem, instead of bringing out social workers, instead of getting them programs, cops just arrest these people and throw them in jail. And that's the situation that is the toughest. But in law school, I really would say learn the basic classes and if you want to do civil rights, don't start out by going to a civil rights firm. Start out by going into the government, whether it's for the city, whether it's for the public defender, whether it's for the DA, whether it's for the AUSA. Spend 2 to 3 years learning the basics before you jump in to civil law, because you really, really need to understand the basics of criminal law and what makes these charges stick, what makes them get dismissed, what the elements of these charges are, because then you can grasp the full picture of civil rights and of Section 1983, which is the federal statute that civil rights comes under.
Okay, amazing. So anything you're working on now that you want to share?
Anything I'm working on now? Yeah, I'm working on a very good case. Prakash Churaman, who at 14 years old was unlawfully arrested for a murder he didn't commit. The cops framed him. The cops forced him to confess to something he didn't do when no one else said he was involved at all. He tried to hang himself twice while he was in jail. Absolutely horrific. And he finally overturned, and he got out when he was.
The cops tried to what?
The cops tried to frame him. No, I'm saying he tried to kill. When he was in jail, he tried to hang himself.
He tried.
Yeah.
All right.
And so his case was overturned, and obviously dismissed because it's completely innocent. And so we're fighting with the city right now, and we're suing the city right now. But to understand and to listen to my client from 14 to 19 to be in 5 different penal institutions when you're developing as a boy, as a man, when you're coming into puberty, when you're learning what women are, when you're learning how the world works. He came out having never kissed a girl, having never held an iPhone.
Wow.
And he's been out for 2 years now, and he couldn't be a better child, which he still is. He's not even a person yet. He's still developing. And, he's 21 years old right now. From 14 to 19, he was in jail. And I am excited to get him millions of dollars because he deserves the entire world.
Amazing.
And I'm just going through DD5 after DD5 right now, just trying to paint the picture that I know, but paint the picture that the jurors hopefully will be able to see if the city doesn't come up with enough money to make him happy.
That's awesome. Cary London or no one?
Yes, that is my logo. That's my logo. I love that.
So, Cary, I know, that's great. So did we leave anything out? Like, is there anything you want to share, any advice that you would like?
Well, I just figured I'll come back, right, Benny? If you invite me. Any advice? Yes. Again, spend time with your family. Do not make work your entire life, because you want to be able to look at your kids in the eyes and know that you worked for them, but you didn't overwork and miss them. So have a good home life, a good wife, have a good relationship, be a good father, be a good husband. And if your home life, as I even said to you, and I say to you all the time, if your home life is in check, it's easy to get your professional life to where you want it to be. And I'm not even where I want to be. I'm here. I still want to be up here. I want to be going back in front of the Supreme Court. I want to be arguing and changing laws. I want to be putting money in these people's pockets.
You're a hustler, man, and it's amazing. No, I love it, and I'm so glad that we're connected, and I really appreciate you coming on and joining Lawyer Stories Connect and sharing your story. And I civil rights is such an important thing, especially always and in today's world. And thanks, man. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to hanging out with you again.
Absolutely. Please do another Lawyer Stories event, because the one I was at was incredible on the rooftop 3 years ago in Brooklyn. And I want to go to the next one, whether it's Miami, Boston, wherever you do it, Benny, I'll be there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Cary, stay right there. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.